The Enloe Powerhouse and Dam were built in 1922 to meet the electricity demands of the local mining industry and a growing population in the Okanagan River Basin.
Here was a wonderful river with the ability to provide electricity. And pretty soon Oroville had electricity, including the first neon sign in Okanagan County.
And the Powerhouse was made from Oroville-made brick. Williams and Finney were noted to have the best brick in Okanagan County, but maybe in the state of Washington.
The dam and powerhouse operated until 1958, at which point service from the Bonneville Power Administration transmission lines reached the area.
And in the 50s and 60s, it wasn't a concern to maintain the historical features, I don't think, in our area. So the dam went into disrepair, and the powerhouse especially.
Now out of service for over 50 years, the Okanagan County Public Utility District nonetheless recognizes the historic significance of the site. The PUD recently released a solicitation seeking a party interested in taking over ownership of the Enloe Dam Powerhouse.
We recognize the powerhouse is significant to a lot of people, and we see it as a valuable resource. And rather than just proposing it for immediate removal, we're looking for people to come up with ideas and ways that they would fund that new development.
While the powerhouse is remote and in disrepair, it does afford a unique opportunity to tap into tourism and recreational activities.
Perhaps there would be a viable means of support for redoing that building. I think it's possible.
If they would build a picnic ground on this side and the bridge across, then people coming up the trail or staying out there and going down the trail back to Oroville, and it would work both ways.
The property poses an adaptive use challenge, but the potential payoff for a creative solution is enormous.
It is important not only to preserve history, but to understand. And having historical buildings helps make it real.
Constructed in 1909, the Woodinville School took its present-day form in 1948 when architect Fred B. Stephen worked to balance the facade following an earlier expansion.
Woodinville Schoolhouse has been here since 1892. And it's been a gathering spot for the community since that time. So it's a very historic area, and it is also one of the last and few historic buildings in Woodinville. It is the first impression that people have when they come to visit Woodinville.
After nearly a century serving Woodinville students, the local school district mothballed the building in the 1980s. The building briefly served as City Hall, but closed once again in 2001. The city has pursued public-private partnership opportunities for the rehabilitation of the school.
Our vision was to put in a restaurant and brewery with maybe a boutique hotel up on the top floor. So they sent out an RFP, and we responded, gave them pretty much what we thought was exactly what they wanted, and the city council voted it down.
The Heritage Society was extremely disappointed with the outcome of that last proposal, which seemed like it was just flawless.
I think everyone has an interest in the building, or most everyone is concerned about the long term. Woodinville has so few buildings left. This building in particular gives a glimpse into the past.
While the city continues to seek ideas for reuse, supporters fear that demolition by neglect will soon make any rehabilitation project unrealistic.
I just wish they'd go ahead and restore it and put it to use. Letting it sit here and deteriorate isn't helping anybody.
We as the Heritage Society would be very sad to see such a landmark disappear.
In 1886, a British steel tycoon named Peter Kirk envisioned a Pittsburgh of the West. The Trueblood house is one of 8 homes built by the Kirkland Land and Improvement Company in 1889 in an effort to turn this vision into reality. Like many areas in Puget Sound, Kirkland has witnessed a dramatic spike in land values, placing smaller, historic homes increasingly at risk.
These houses are simply just being demolished for a larger new single-family residence. They're tearing down these 1,500 square foot houses because the value's in the land actually, and not in the house itself.
Old house living is not for everyone. They need repair, they're small, they're drafty, and the land value is so high that there is just an idea that you don't put a cheap house on a valuable piece of property.
owners of the Trueblood house plan to build a new, larger residence on the property. Preferring to avoid demolition, the owners would like to see the Trueblood house relocated.
When it's moved, then it loses some of its context, and that's too bad. But the bottom line is, this will save the building. It's a terrible, awful shame that this is all we have to show from the very beginning of Kirkland. I would love to see the house saved and preserved and have another family move into it and enjoy it and love it.
The biggest threat is development and a lack of understanding of what value older homes bring to a community.
The Dvorak barn in Kent harkens to the city's early years when the area was home to a significant farming community. But the damming of the Green River in 1962, followed by the completion of Interstate 5 in 1966, played pivotal roles in transforming Kent from a farming community to the industrial center it is today.
This building is important to me because it represents the agricultural history of Kent, Washington, which has disappeared so fast.
The city of Kent is embarking on the Green River Levee Improvement Program, requiring construction of a levee directly through the Dvorak farmstead site.
When I found out, I put together a task force to try and save the barn. We do not have a barn that represents the farming history and culture of the Kent Valley.
Although the farmhouse and several outbuildings all need to be removed, the barn retains the most integrity and is the priority for local supporters hoping to relocate the structure and find a new community use.
Well, the barn itself, I think, is such an example of the community, both as an agricultural and a dairy farming area. And this is what the people did here.
It would be nice to have a little bit of the history preserved. It's not an elaborate barn, but it does have quite a bit of character, and it reflects the agricultural industry that used to go on here.
My hope is to move the barn and then to create the interpretive center that we would like to see. We have our work cut out, and we're going to give it a gung-ho try, and more than likely with our chutzpah we will be successful.
In 1946, the Department of Fish and Wildlife acquired 160 acres of the Maplewood Springs watershed in Puyallup for the production of game fish. The ensuing hatchery complex, built in 1948, continues to remain in active use as a trout hatchery, but is slated to be converted for salmon production, and local advocates are concerned that the National Register listed complex may be adversely impacted by the changes.
$5 million have been set aside from the capital budget to go ahead and rebuild the whole entire hatchery. And I just think it's really important that we have some kind of a compromise so we save and preserve this building.
The Department of Fish and Wildlife has expressed optimism that rehabilitation will result in an updated facility that retains its historic character.
We're looking at basically three components: our water resource, our water right, our obligations, what it is we are obligated to produce here, and our historical integrity and the infrastructure we presently have on site. We would like to keep what we can.
It's so important to be able to show our generations to come what we did, how we did it, and teach them through that instead of showing them a picture or handing them a book.
There's a great disconnect from reading about it in the classroom, being taught in the classroom, and actually seeing it in reality. If you can make the classroom real, I just think it has a much greater impact, and this is what makes it all come alive.
Local businessman Clint Dobson is credited with building the unique collection of structures known as the LaCrosse rock houses and station between 1934 and 1936.
These structures are built of basalt stone, which is a result of the Ice Age Missoula floods that came through here many years ago. There wasn't a lot of money, and so they used what was local and what was just right here at hand.
They were built out of local materials, which is pretty unique. It really ties them into the scenery and the overall landscape and geology of the area, which is pretty incredible.
Local farmhands, workers, and railroad crews used the houses as rental units, while the station offered a service and repair shop. Hopes for rehabilitation were lifted when the owners gifted the property to LaCrosse Community Pride.
Our intentions immediately are to stabilize the awning on the service station. Similar thing on the houses across the way, some of that rock work that has started to become detached from the front of the building. That's our first concern.
We had a community conversations meeting to discuss what we could do with the buildings. Museum, artist retreat, could be coffee house. There's a lot of different uses that it could be.
One thing is certain, the project will ultimately capture the unique nature of the basalt buildings and highlight why they matter to the people of LaCrosse.
I think LaCrosse has got a wonderful history. I think it's a great community, and I think it's worth fighting for. I think it's worth tackling these projects even when they're pretty daunting, and I think it's important to forge on and try.
There's something extraordinary east of the Cascades here, and that is a remarkable heritage on the land. LaCrosse is part of that heritage.
Providence Heights College and Provincialate was founded in 1961 as one of only 2 institutions in the nation established specifically to promote college education for sisters.
They were given an opportunity to have what amounted to a regular college education after high school. That's what happened here.
Noted regional architect John S. Maloney designed the campus, located on a 29-acre parcel atop the Sammamish Plateau in central King County. The campus centerpiece, a Gothic-inspired modernist chapel, features art glass windows created by Gabriel Loire, a world-renowned stained glass artist from France.
This is like an inch thick chunks of glass. It's been chipped in a certain way that refracts the light, cemented literally together. And one of the unique things about it is it's structural.
The National Register eligible campus is significant for its modern interpretation of Gothic architecture and as a representation of the sister formation movement. The college closed in 1969. Most recently, the campus served as the Issaquah branch of City Church.
I've been a resident of Sammamish for 50 years, and a lot of our historical buildings have been destroyed. This is another one of the buildings that affects the whole Sammamish Plateau.
A memorandum of agreement is currently in place to sell the site to a housing developer with plans to scrape the site for single-family homes.
It's almost a turnkey school as it is. You could probably go in and start teaching classes here in a week. I would love to see it used like that. That's what it was designed for.
At the very least, however, supporters would like to see any potential new construction be thoughtfully integrated.
In an ideal world, we would like to see the whole thing saved. My at least hope is preserve the chapel in the middle as a community center of some sort.
It's a destination, and it should continue to be a destination for many more generations.
This is too unique to be destroyed, and children and all peoples need to know that there was history here on the plateau.
I think if this site was on one of the main roads on the plateau, there would be an uproar about the idea of just tearing the whole thing down. But there isn't. It suffers from its isolation, which is also part of its charm.